there's one emotion that has toppled more empires, destroyed more careers, and ruined more lives than fear, anger, or greed combined. Machiavelli called it the silent assassin of great men. Napoleon had it. Steve Jobs nearly lost Apple because of it. And right now, it's probably growing inside you without you even knowing it. Pride isn't just feeling good about your accomplishments. The deadly kind of pride is the invisible force that whispers you're untouchable when you're actually most vulnerable. It's the voice that says you don't need advice when you desperately do. It's what makes you dismiss criticism that could save your career, ignore warning signs that could save your relationships, and reject help that could save your future. Here's what most people don't understand about pride. It doesn't announce itself with arrogance or boasting. The most dangerous pride wears a mask of confidence. It shows up as being slightly too sure of yourself in moments when uncertainty would serve you better. It appears as that subtle feeling that you've figured things out when the world is constantly changing around you. Machiavelli studied the rise and fall of leaders for decades, and he discovered something chilling. Every single downfall followed the same pattern. Success bred confidence, confidence bred certainty, and certainty bred blindness. The very thing that got them to the top became the thing that brought them down. The scariest part? Pride doesn't wait for you to become successful to destroy you. It can ruin the student who thinks they know more than their teacher, the employee who stops learning from feedback, or the friend who becomes too proud to apologize. It operates at every level, and it's hunting for your weak spots right now. But Machiavelli didn't just warn us about this danger. He gave us the tools to recognize it, fight it, and turn it into our greatest advantage. Before I reveal these Machiavellian principles, understand this. Once you see how power truly operates, you cannot unsee it. This knowledge will fundamentally shift how you read people, situations, and the games being played around you every day. If you're not ready for that level of awareness, stop watching now. For everyone else, pay attention to every word. Number 1. The mirror test script. There's a businessman who built a tech empire worth billions. He was praised by magazines, celebrated by investors, and worshipped by employees. But he had one fatal flaw that would eventually cost him everything. He stopped seeing his own weaknesses while everyone around him could see them clearly. This happens to almost everyone who achieves any level of success. We become experts at spotting what we're good at. We can list our strengths, our achievements, our victories, but we become blind to the very things that could destroy us. Pride convinces us that knowing our strengths is enough. It whispers that we've figured it out, that we've got this handled. Machiavelli saw this pattern destroy leader after leader. He watched as powerful men fell not because their enemies were stronger, but because they couldn't see their own vulnerabilities. They were fighting battles they didn't even know they were losing. The truth is, your enemies are already studying your weaknesses. Your competitors are mapping out your blind spots. The people who want to take your position are cataloging every mistake you make. While you're admiring your strengths, they're building strategies around your flaws. But here's what most people miss. Your weaknesses aren't just professional blind spots. They're emotional patterns, thinking habits, and behavioral triggers that show up everywhere in your life. Maybe you interrupt people when you're excited. Maybe you make decisions too quickly when you're stressed. Maybe you avoid difficult conversations until they become explosive. These patterns are invisible to you because pride acts like a shield. It protects your ego by hiding the very information you need most. Every time someone tries to point out a weakness, pride steps in and explains it away. It says they're jealous, they don't understand, they're being negative. Meanwhile, these hidden weaknesses are sabotaging your relationships, limiting your career growth, and setting you up for spectacular failures. You're walking around with blind spots the size of trucks, and everyone can see them except you. Machiavelli discovered something revolutionary. The most powerful people weren't those who knew their strengths best. They were the ones who hunted their weaknesses like their life depended on it. They turned self-examination into a competitive advantage. Think about it this way. If you can see your own flaws before your enemies do, you can fix them before they become weapons against you. If you can spot your own patterns before they sabotage you, you can change them before they cost you everything. This brings us to strategy number 1 of 5, Machiavelli's mirror test. This isn't about beating yourself up or becoming paranoid. This is about becoming strategically aware of your own vulnerabilities so you can address them before they address you. Most people think self-awareness means knowing your strengths. Machiavelli taught something completely different. True power comes from obsessively cataloging your weaknesses before your enemies do. You're going to create a weekly weakness audit where you actively hunt for blind spots in your thinking, skills, and judgment. Here's how it works. Every week, you're going to ask yourself one simple question. What am I assuming that could be wrong? Then you're going to dig deeper. What feedback have I been dismissing? What criticism have I been avoiding? What patterns do I keep repeating that aren't serving me? This isn't self-doubt. This is strategic intelligence gathering on yourself. You're becoming your own best detective, uncovering the hidden vulnerabilities that could destroy everything you've built. Part 2. The Betrayal Prevention Protocol Script. Here's a story that will change how you think about trust forever. A CEO thought he had the loyalty of his entire executive team. They smiled in meetings, agreed with his vision, and praised his leadership. When a hostile takeover attempt happened, he expected them to fight alongside him. Instead, 3 of his most trusted executives secretly negotiated deals with the enemy. He lost his company not to outside forces, but to the people he trusted most. This betrayal shocked him, but it shouldn't have. The signs were there all along, hidden in tiny moments he never thought to examine. The way they responded when he needed small favors, how they acted when supporting him cost them nothing, the enthusiasm they showed when no one important was watching. Pride tells us that loyalty is permanent. It whispers that people who seem supportive will always be supportive. It convinces us that good relationships today mean good relationships forever. But Machiavelli knew something different. Loyalty isn't a character trait. It's a situational response that changes based on cost, risk, and opportunity. The people around you are constantly making micro-decisions about whether to support or undermine you. Most of these decisions happen in moments so small you don't even notice them. Someone choosing whether to defend you in a conversation you're not part of. A colleague deciding whether to share credit for a project you both worked on. A friend choosing whether to support your idea when it's unpopular. These tiny moments are like stress tests for loyalty. They reveal who will stand with you when it actually matters. But here's the problem. Most people only pay attention to loyalty when the stakes are high. By then, it's too late to do anything about what you discover. Think about your own relationships right now. Do you know who would actually support you if supporting you became costly? Do you know who would choose their own interests over yours if they had to pick? Do you know who talks about you positively when you're not around versus who stays silent or even agrees with criticism? You probably don't know because most people never test loyalty until they desperately need it. They assume good intentions will translate to good actions under pressure. They believe that people who are nice to them now will be loyal to them later. This assumption has destroyed more leaders than any external enemy ever could. Machiavelli developed a completely different approach. Instead of waiting for major crises to reveal people's true loyalty, he created small situations where people could choose to support or undermine him. He watched how they responded when it cost them nothing to help him. This revealed everything he needed to know about what they would do when it cost them something. The beauty of this approach is that it's not manipulative or cynical. You're not trying to trick people or create drama. You're simply paying attention to information that's already available. You're noticing patterns that are already happening. You're seeing reality instead of what you hope reality to be. This leads us to strategy number 2 of 5, the betrayal prevention protocol. You're going to start loyalty stress testing the people in your life by creating low-stakes situations where they can choose to support or undermine you. Here's how it works. You deliberately create small opportunities for people to show support when it costs them nothing. Ask for minor favors. See who shares your content on social media. Notice who speaks positively about your ideas in group settings. Watch who gives you credit when you're not there to hear it. Pay attention to enthusiasm levels. Real loyalty shows up as genuine excitement about your success. Fake loyalty shows up as polite support with hidden reluctance. Notice who celebrates your wins and who minimizes them. Notice who asks follow-up questions about your projects and who changes the subject. This isn't about becoming paranoid or suspicious. This is about making informed decisions about trust levels before those decisions become critical to your success or survival. If you're still here, you already think differently. That alone sets you apart. Now, sharpen your edge. Hit subscribe. This is how you stay 10 steps ahead in a world that rewards the silent strategist. Number 3. The reverse status game script. There's a consultant who makes 7 figures a year and nobody knows his name. He doesn't speak at conferences. He doesn't post on social media. He doesn't have his picture on his company website. Yet, some of the most powerful CEOs in the world have him on speed dial and pay him extraordinary amounts of money for his advice. How did he build this kind of influence while staying completely invisible? He figured out something that most people never learn. The traditional status game is a trap that feeds your pride while destroying your power. Watch what happens in most workplaces, social groups, or business settings. Everyone is fighting to look important. They want their name on projects. They want credit for ideas. They want to be seen as the smart one, the leader, the person with the answers. They compete for recognition, for titles, for the spotlight. This creates a predictable pattern. The more someone fights for status, the more threatened other people feel. The more credit they take, the less willing others are to help them succeed. The more they try to look important, the more resistance they create around them. Pride drives this entire game. It tells you that recognition equals power. It whispers that unless people know you're responsible for success, the success doesn't count. It convinces you that being visible is the same as being valuable. But Machiavelli saw something different. He studied the people who had real influence, lasting power, and genuine loyalty from others. These people weren't the ones grabbing credit and demanding recognition. They were the ones making other people look good. Think about the most influential person in your life. Not the most famous or the loudest, but the person whose opinion actually changes your decisions. Chances are this person has spent more time building you up than building themselves up. They've given you credit, supported your ideas, and helped you succeed without demanding anything in return. This is the reverse status game. Instead of fighting to look important, you become the person who makes others look important. Instead of taking credit, you give it away strategically. Instead of demanding recognition, you become the invisible force behind other people's success. Here's why this works so powerfully. When you make someone else look good, you create something more valuable than respect. You create gratitude, and gratitude is a much stronger foundation for loyalty than fear or admiration ever could be. People will forget what you said and what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. When you consistently make others feel successful, intelligent, and important, they become invested in your success. Not because they have to, but because they want to. The consultant I mentioned earlier built his entire career on this principle. Every piece of advice he gives makes his clients look smarter to their boards. Every strategy he develops gets implemented under their names. Every success story becomes their success story, and because of this, they trust him with their biggest challenges and pay him premium rates for solutions. This approach also keeps your pride in check in a powerful way. When your source of strength comes from serving others rather than promoting yourself, you can't develop the dangerous kind of ego that destroys people. Your identity becomes tied to making others successful rather than making yourself look successful. This brings us to strategy number 3 of 5, the reverse status game. While everyone else fights to look important, you're going to deliberately position yourself as the person who makes others look good. Here's how you implement this. When your ego wants credit, give it away strategically. When pride wants recognition, become the invisible force behind someone else's success. In meetings, ask questions that make others look smart. When projects succeed, highlight other people's contributions. When you have a good idea, find a way to let someone else present it and get the credit. This isn't about being a doormat or lacking confidence. This is about understanding that real power comes from being indispensable to other people's success, rather than being dependent on other people's recognition of your success. Number 4. The failure collection strategy script. There's a venture capitalist who has one of the highest success rates in Silicon Valley. Entrepreneurs fight to get meetings with him. His investment recommendations are followed religiously by other investors. But if you walked into his office, you wouldn't see awards or success stories covering the walls. Instead, you'd see a detailed timeline of every failed investment he's ever made. Each failure is documented with painful precision. The warning signs he missed, the assumptions that proved wrong, the advice he should have given but didn't, the red flags he ignored because he wanted to believe in the potential. This wall of failures is his most valuable asset, and it's the secret behind his incredible success rate. Most people do the exact opposite. They hide their failures, minimize their mistakes, and try to forget their worst decisions as quickly as possible. Pride tells them that dwelling on failure is negative thinking. It whispers that successful people focus on the positive and move forward without looking back. But here's what pride doesn't want you to understand. Your failures contain information that your successes never will. Success can happen for dozens of reasons, many of which have nothing to do with your decisions. Market timing, luck, other people's work, external circumstances. Success stories are contaminated with variables you can't control. Failure is different. Failure is usually the direct result of specific decisions, assumptions, or blind spots that you can identify and fix. When something goes wrong, you can trace it back to the exact moment where your thinking went off track. This gives you data that can prevent similar failures in the future. Think about your own relationship with failure. When something goes wrong in your life, what's your first instinct? Most people immediately start explaining it away. Bad timing, unfair circumstances, other people's mistakes, factors beyond their control. Pride protects them from the discomfort of taking responsibility, but it also protects them from the learning that comes with that discomfort. Machiavelli took a completely different approach. He collected failures like other people collect trophies. Every mistake became a case study. Every wrong decision became data. Every setback became intelligence that could prevent future setbacks. He discovered something powerful in this process. Failure patterns are predictable. The same thinking errors show up again and again. The same emotional triggers lead to the same bad decisions. The same blind spots create the same problems. Once you can see these patterns, you can interrupt them before they destroy you. But there's something even more valuable that comes from studying your failures. You start to see the difference between your story about what happened and what actually happened. Pride creates narratives that protect your ego but hide the truth. It explains away your role in failures and exaggerates your role in successes. When you document failures with brutal honesty, these false narratives fall apart. You see your own patterns of self-deception. You notice how you consistently avoid responsibility in certain areas. You recognize the warning signs you always ignore and the advice you always dismiss. This level of self-awareness is incredibly uncomfortable, but it's also incredibly powerful. You can't fix problems you won't acknowledge. You can't improve decisions you won't examine. You can't break patterns you won't admit exist. The venture capitalist I mentioned earlier says that studying his failures taught him more about investing than studying his successes ever did. His failures showed him exactly which assumptions to question, which warning signs to take seriously, and which emotional reactions to distrust. This brings us to strategy number 4 of 5, the failure collection strategy. Instead of hiding from your failures, you're going to collect them like battle scars and study them like sacred texts. Here's how you implement this. Create what Machiavelli would call a failure portfolio. Document every significant mistake, missed opportunity, and wrong decision you've made. But don't just list what went wrong. Analyze why it went wrong. What assumptions were you making? What warning signs did you ignore? What advice did you dismiss? What patterns keep showing up? Review this portfolio monthly, not to punish yourself, but to identify patterns that pride prevents you from seeing. Your failures are the only teacher that never lies to you, never flatters you, and never tells you what you want to hear instead of what you need to know. Number 5. The Power Pause Principle Script. There's a text message sitting in someone's phone right now that could destroy their career. It was written in anger, typed in frustration, and sent in the heat of the moment. 30 seconds after hitting send, they realized their mistake. But by then, it was too late. That message is now screenshot evidence in a lawsuit that will cost them everything they've built. This same scenario plays out thousands of times every day. A harsh email sent during a stressful moment. A decision made while emotions are running high. A response given when pride is wounded and logic is offline. These split-second reactions create permanent consequences that people spend years trying to recover from. Pride operates at the speed of impulse. When someone challenges your ideas, pride wants an immediate response. When someone questions your competence, pride demands instant defense. When someone threatens your position, pride pushes for immediate action. It creates urgency where patience would serve you better. But here's what's happening in your brain during these moments. When pride is activated, your emotional systems take control. The parts of your brain responsible for careful thinking, long-term planning, and rational decision-making get temporarily shut down. You're literally not capable of your best thinking when pride is driving your responses. Machiavelli understood this biological reality long before neuroscience could explain it. He noticed that his worst decisions always came from his quickest reactions. His most successful strategies always came from his most deliberate thinking. The difference wasn't intelligence or experience. The difference was timing. He developed what became his secret weapon against pride-driven disasters, the deliberate pause. Before any important decision, conversation, or reaction, he built in a waiting period. Not because he was indecisive, but because he knew that certainty was often a warning sign rather than a green light. Think about your own pattern of decision-making. When you feel most certain about something, when you're most convinced you're right, when you're most eager to act immediately, what usually happens? If you're honest, you'll probably notice that your most confident moments often lead to your biggest mistakes. This happens because pride creates a false sense of clarity. It makes complicated situations seem simple. It makes risky decisions seem safe. It makes emotional reactions seem logical. The stronger your certainty feels, the more likely it is that pride is influencing your judgment. The most successful people have learned to treat certainty as a red flag rather than a green light. When they feel absolutely sure about something, that's exactly when they slow down. When pride says act now, wisdom says wait. When impulse says this is urgent, experience says this can probably wait 24 hours. Here's what happens when you build this pause into your decision-making process. First, your emotional intensity naturally decreases. The anger, frustration, excitement, or fear that was driving your urgency starts to settle. Second, you start seeing angles and consequences that were invisible when you were in reaction mode. Third, you often discover that the decision you were about to make would have created more problems than it solved. But the pause serves another crucial function. It breaks pride's control over your actions. Pride loses its power when it can't create immediate reactions. It feeds on urgency and dies in stillness. The simple act of waiting transforms pride-driven impulses into wisdom-guided choices. This doesn't mean becoming slow or indecisive. Some situations genuinely require quick action. But those situations are much rarer than pride wants you to believe. Most of the decisions that feel urgent are actually just emotionally charged. Most of the reactions that feel necessary are actually just pride protecting itself. This brings us to strategy number 5 of 5, the power pause principle. You're going to build a deliberate buffer between strong emotions and important actions. Here's how you implement this. When you feel certain about something, that's exactly when you should wait. When pride says act now, wisdom says sleep on it. Build a 24-hour buffer between strong emotions and important actions. This simple delay has prevented more disasters than any other strategy ever could. Before sending that email, wait until tomorrow. Before making that phone call, wait until your emotions settle. Before having that confrontation, wait until you can approach it strategically rather than emotionally. This pause won't make you weak or indecisive. It will make you dangerous in the best possible way. These 5 strategies from Machiavelli aren't just historical curiosities. They're practical tools for surviving and thriving in a world where pride destroys more dreams than failure ever could. The mirror test helps you see blind spots before they become catastrophes. The betrayal. Prevention protocol reveals loyalty before you desperately need it. The reverse status game builds real influence while keeping ego in check. The failure collection strategy turns your worst moments into your greatest teachers. And the power pause principle prevents pride from hijacking your most important decisions. The choice you have right now is simple. You can let pride operate in the shadows, slowly undermining everything you're building. Or you can implement these strategies and turn your greatest weakness into your greatest strength. Machiavelli's warning was clear. Pride will destroy you if you let it, but it will serve you if you master it. The question isn't whether you have pride. Everyone does. The question is whether you'll control it before it controls you. Start with one strategy. Pick the one that made you most uncomfortable, because that's probably the one you need most. Your future self will thank you for the discomfort you're willing to face today. The next video the algorithm chose for you isn't random. It's your next tactical upgrade. Click it now and continue your silent ascent. Those who hesitate lose influence.